Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, grab the insights that matter, and, well, hopefully arm you with stuff that actually sticks. Today, we're diving headfirst into something pretty fascinating, I think. How does a piece of music gear, like a relatively simple digital stomp box, end up defining whole genres? And not just that, but develop this kind of legendary soul, something that lasts way beyond its tech specs, even after it's discontinued. There's definitely a kind of magic to some innovations, especially digital ones sometimes, that goes beyond just the circuitry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is the core of our deep dive today. We're getting into the details of the Boss RV5 digital reverb, a compact pedal, sure, but it became this absolute cornerstone for so many guitarists and, carved out a huge place in Boss's history.
So our goal today is to unpack its story, where it came from, the features that were actually pretty innovative back then, and the impact it had culturally that still lasts. We want you to get not just what it did, but why it's still so sought after, why it's this kind of icon in music.
Exactly. Because for a whole generation of players, this little box was like a shortcut, a simple way to get these incredibly lush ambient sounds. It made something complex feel accessible. It's really interesting how one tool can shape creativity like that.
It really is. So, okay, let's start at the beginning then. Where did the RV5 fit in when Boss brought it out in, 2002? It wasn't just pulled out of thin air, right?
Oh, definitely not.
Oh.
It came in as the successor to the RV3. And the RV3, well, that was already kind of a cult favorite itself. It was known for mental reverb and delay, which was cool but different.
Right, the combo pedal.
Exactly. So what's interesting is Boss made a very deliberate shift with the RV5. They decided to go back to a dedicated reverb-only pedal. It wasn't moving backwards, though. It was more like a focused evolution. They saw this growing need, for really high-quality, almost studio-grade reverb, but in a compact pedal format, without the delay part maybe confusing things or taking up processing power. So this let them really hone in on the reverb algorithms, push the quality, aiming for that studio sound on your pedal board. It was all about specializing to get better fidelity.
And clearly that focus worked because, the lifespan of this thing, it stayed in production for 17 years, 2002 all the way to 2019. Only then did the RV6 replace it, that kind of run. It just screams success, doesn't it? Shows how much players liked it.
Absolutely. 17 years for any piece of music tech, especially digital stuff that changes so fast, that's huge.
Yeah.
Monumental, really. It definitely cemented it as one of Boss's most popular digital reverbs ever. But yeah, to get why it was so acclaimed, we kind of need to peel back the layers a bit and look at the tech it brought.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. What was actually inside this little box for the early 2000s? What made it innovative technology-wise?
Right, well, this is where it gets pretty interesting. A really key thing was the 24-bit digital signal processing, the DSP. Now, you got to remember, a lot of earlier digital effects were maybe 16-bit.
Okay.
So moving to 24-bit was a big leap. It meant much more dynamic range, higher resolution. For the player, that translated into reverbs that sounded smoother, decayed more naturally, less of that slightly grainy or harsh digital artifact sound you sometimes got. It just sounded, well, cleaner, more expensive. A definite step towards studio quality in a pedal.
So not just giving you reverb options, but the quality of the reverb itself was a step up. Less artificial.
Precisely. That level of audio fidelity was a real game changer for a lot of people using pedals. And speaking of expanding the sound, another big deal was the stereo input and output. Stereo I/O.
Ah, yeah. How important was that for guitarists getting into those bigger ambient sounds?
Oh, it was huge. If you wanted those wide, spacious effects, stereo was essential. It let you send your signal to amps or direct to a board in stereo and really create this immersive sound field. Suddenly, your reverb could feel massive, truly panoramic, way beyond a simple mono effect. And of course, like pretty much all Boss compacts, it had a buffered bypass.
Right, the buffer. Maybe quickly explain why that matters.
Sure. So a buffered bypass, which is standard for Boss, basically helps keep your guitar signal strong, especially if you have long cables or, a bunch of pedals chained together. It prevents that tone suck, that loss of high-end sparkle and clarity that can happen. It just ensures your core guitar tone stays intact through the chain.
Okay, got it. So we've got better processing stereo capability, but the real magic, I guess, where the tech meets the sound was in the modes, right? 8 different reverb types. That's a lot of variety.
Absolutely. That palette of sounds was really where the RV5 shone. It wasn't just innovative tech. It offered really diverse sonic options. And yeah, it had the essentials covered really well. You had Spring, which did a pretty convincing job of mimicking those drippy, splashy reverb tanks in old amps.
The classic amp reverb sounds.
Exactly. Then Plate, which is known for that bright, smooth, really dense sound you hear on lots of studio recordings, especially vocals, very hi-fi. Hall gave you those really large cavernous spaces, perfect for epic sounds, big swells. And Room was for smaller, more natural-sounding ambience, good for adding just a bit of space without washing everything out. So those four gave you a really solid foundation.
Covers the basics beautifully, but it didn't just do the basics, did it? This is where it started getting kind of creative and maybe a bit weird. What were the modes that really stood out as different?
Yeah, this is where the RV5 really carved its niche. The gate mode, for example, that was kind of a curveball. It gives you that really short, chopped-off reverb tail, famously used on 80s drums.
Yeah, that gated snare sound.
Right. But guitarists, especially in post-punk and stuff, found cool uses for it, added this sharp, rhythmic kind of quality, showed it wasn't just for smooth ambience. Then you had the plus delay mode. Yeah, that was a smart move, kind of a nod back to the RV3.
Ah, bringing back some of that combo functionality.
Exactly. It layered a simple delay with the reverb. So you got two key effects in one mode, which obviously appealed to people who liked the RV3 or just wanted that combo.
And the dynamic mode seems like a really clever idea specifically for guitar players, letting the reverb bloom but keeping the notes clear.
It was brilliant, honestly. Dynamic mode is basically a ducking reverb. What that means is the reverb level drops or ducks when you're playing, and then swells back up in the pauses between notes or chords. So you could have this really lush, continuous reverb wash going on, but your actual playing, your attack, wouldn't get buried or muddied by it. The notes punch through clearly.
That's super useful. Avoids the sonic mud.
Totally. Great for lead lines where you want sustain and space, but also clarity.
Okay, but we've saved the superstar for last, haven't we? If there's one mode that just became legendary, the reason so many people still talk about the RV5, it has to be modulate, right?
Oh, absolutely. No question. The modular mode is like the cornerstone of the RV5's whole legacy. What it does is add this gentle, sort of swirling chorus effect to the reverb tails. It creates this incredibly rich, ethereal, almost shimmering texture. It's hard to describe perfectly, but it just sounds beautiful.
It wasn't just a technical thing, it became a sound.
Exactly. It wasn't just reverb with modulation added. There was something about the way the RV5 did it. It felt organic, alive. They gave the sound this movement and depth. And yeah, it instantly became the sound for shoegaze players, ambient artists. It almost defined that dreamy, swirling guitar sound for a whole generation.
So thinking about the overall tone and the signature sounds, it all comes back to modulate. That lush sound is still what people chase. But it wasn't just about modulate, was it?
Definitely not. Modulate achieved that kind of mythical status, for sure. Synonymous with shoegaze, ambient, post-rock. But you're right, it wasn't a one-trick pony. Those Clayton Hall algorithms we mentioned, they were really clean, very hi-fi sounding. They were genuinely useful in the studio for getting professional-sounding reverb, and they worked great live, too, so it had that workhorse quality as well.
And you mentioned the dynamic mode again, that ability to kind of have your cake and eat it, too, the big space and the clear attack.
Exactly. That clarity within the ambience was a huge plus. It meant you could dial in a really deep, swirling reverb sound, but the actual notes you played still had punch and definition. They didn't just dissolve into a wash, which can happen easily with some reverbs. It kept things articulate, even when things got dense.
It's fascinating to think how this one pedal fits into the bigger picture. If we zoom out a bit, how does the RV5 sit in the history of Boss reverb pedals? What was the timeline there?
Right, looking at the lineage is helpful. Boss were really pioneers in compact digital reverb. The first one ever was the RV2, way back in 1987. That was groundbreaking digital studio reverb in a little pedal. Then, as we said, the RV3 came in 94. That cult classic reverb plus delay combo. Really versatile.
Okay.
Then comes our main subject, the RV5, running from 2002 to 2019. The dedicated reverb icon, known for those 8 modes, the 24-bit sound, stereo, and especially modulate. By the time it came out, yeah, there were other digital options starting to appear, but Boss had that combination of like road-ready build quality being available everywhere and these really refined sounds, especially modulate, at a price that wasn't crazy boutique level.
So it hit a sweet spot of quality and accessibility.
Pretty much. Then its successor, the RV6, came out in 2015 and is still around. It brought updated algorithms, a dedicated shimmer mode, which clearly takes inspiration from modulated reverb plus expression pedal control, pushing things further. And then for the real deep divers, Boss released the RV500 workstation in 2017. Massive programmability, tons of options.
So with all these newer pedals, like the RD6 being technically better maybe, and the RV500 being way more powerful, why does the RV5 still have this hold? Why isn't it just, old news?
That's such a great question, and it gets back to that whole idea of a pedal having a soul, doesn't it? Despite the RV6 having on paper improved tech, or the RV500 having endless options or countless boutique pedals doing amazing things now, the RV5 is still super sought after. There's just something about its specific sound, particularly that modulate mode. For many players, newer pedals, even if technically superior, just don't quite capture that specific vibe in the same way. It's almost like the specific character of its early 2000s digital processing. Maybe the slight imperfections gave it this, I don't know, intangible quality, a warmth maybe, that sometimes gets lost in newer, cleaner designs.
Which leads us perfectly into its cultural impact, its legacy. Because it's not just about the tech specs, is it? It's about the music it helped create, the artists who used it.
Absolutely. And the influence on specific artists and genres is undeniable.
Right.
You mentioned Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine earlier. He was famous for using Boss gear. And that RV5 modulate sound became, well, a key ingredient in his whole glide guitar approach. Those
Yeah.
massive swirling textures owe a lot to it.
Wow, okay.
Then you have bands like Explosions in the Sky. They're practically the definition of post-rock for many people, and they leaned heavily on the RV5's modulate and hall modes to build those signature atmospheric landscapes. Epic, but also really intimate feeling.
And it wasn't just these big influential names, right? It became kind of standard gear for certain styles.
Totally. It became a genuine staple. Like, if you were playing shoegaze, post-rock, or even a lot of contemporary worship guitar music through the 2000s, 2010s, the RV5 was almost required equipment. Those unique modulated textures, that lushness. It was just the perfect tool for achieving those expansive emotional sounds. It was the sound people were hearing in their heads.
So it really was everywhere, not just on niche pedal boards.
Oh, yeah. You could argue it was probably the most popular compact reverb pedal of its era. You'd see it on countless pedal boards across tons of different genres, which again speaks to its versatility, just how well it worked for people. That 17-year run proves it wasn't a flash in the pan. And that modulate mode specifically, it became so iconic that it clearly inspired a whole wave of shimmer reverb pedals and other modulation-heavy reverbs from boutique builders later on. It really set a trend.
And people are still buying them today on the used market.
Absolutely. The demand for used RV5s is still really strong, which leads to this interesting point you hear musicians debate, this idea of it being warmer. You genuinely hear players say they prefer the RV5, finding it warmer or more musical than the technically more advanced RV6. And that just highlights how much subjective feel and sonic character matter in music gear. It's not always about the specs on paper. It's about the vibe, the connection, that soul we talked about.
What a story for a little stomp box. Okay, so just to quickly wrap the key things up, the Boss RV5, made from 2002 to 2019, really was a landmark pedal. It gave players 8 high-quality reverb algorithms, had that hi-fi 24-bit sound, crucial stereo I/O, but mostly it's remembered and loved for that legendary modulate mode. That made it the go-to for ambient post-rock shoegaze worship. Anyone chasing those lush, ethereal textures. Even though it's discontinued, its reputation as one of the all-time great compact reverbs is totally solid. It offered a path to a sound and ended up defining it.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes you think, right? What does it really tell us when a piece of digital tech from, decades ago is still so revered, sometimes even preferred over newer, technically better gear? Is it just nostalgia? Or is it something about that perceived warmth, that specific sonic fingerprint it left on so much music? Or maybe it's something deeper, like an emotional connection artists form, with the tools that really help them find their voice. As you think about the RV5, maybe consider how just one feature like that modulate mode can do more than just sound good. It can inspire whole genres and keep sparking ideas for musicians years and years later. It shows that maybe the real magic isn't just in the code, but in how it connects with creativity.